But we're doing intros.
We're doing intros. So hello, welcome to Doctors and DM with a small cast today. That's fine. We're just gonna be on the road to Karl. It's okay. My name is Morgan Forbush. I'm a master's student at UW Milwaukee, and I'm the DM. So I don't have a character intro.
And I'm Thomas Malaby. I'm a professor of anthropology at UWM, and I'm playing Jarl of the Oak, a dwarf battlemaster fighter.
And I'm Luke. I'm a master's student of cultural anthropology at UWM, and I am playing Verfa, the dwarf artificer.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Luke. You're also a master of masters.
Yes.
Yes.
I guess. Whatever that means.
Well, it means a lot in the Kingdom Hearts universe. I don't know if it means much in ours. Hi, I'm Ren. I'm a master's student in English at UWM. I'm playing Ludvier, the Mystic.
Nice. All right. And I don't have my dice rolling, so you might hear very loud on wood dice rolling. That's fine. That's fine. Get some ASMR dice rolling. All right.
There you go.
Why doesn't that channel already exist?
Oh,
I'm sure it does.
It probably does. I don't know.
I'll tip my microphone down and we'll do one.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say that without checking. It's got to be out there, right?
Well,
yeah.
Isn't there like doesn't Critical Role put in like dice? Like they make sure to mic the table so they can
do.
hear the
Yeah,
dice?
in their right, they do that.
Just like here, we'll make sure that you can hear the dice. Ooh.
Has anyone checked out the new Critical Role campaign with the new
No,
DM?
not yet.
I've never actually watched.
Sorry, I'm blowing all my good rolls.
I've never actually watched Critical Role. I've heard good things about it, but actually, even though we're making an actual play right now, I've never really been interested in watching an actual play.
It's my problem with almost all of them is just it's a gigantic time commitment.
Mm-hmm.
But he's extremely impressive, and they're all really amazing. Some of the combats, I mean, from a DM's point of view, his encounter design is terrific. I mean, absolutely terrific. Look up the Manticore battle one. The whole thing going down into the sort of dungeon, and it's terrific.
Yeah. All right, I'm just gonna do that. Sweet.
The Games Institute podcast from University of Waterloo just did a one-shot podcast, which was pretty good. And so my wife wants to play, and so she conned some of her coworkers into coming over, and I'm gonna try my hand at DMing it. But
Good
I'm gonna
for you. Nice.
Yeah, and they none of them have touched it. Like they've like I handed them a character sheet and they were like, So it'll be a long session 0, but that's okay. But I'm tempted to send them. Where'd Ren go?
Oh, Ren.
There's those Wi-Fi issues. But I'm tempted to send them that podcast instead of a Critical Role episode, just because I think Critical Role has a tendency to set unrealistic expectations for new people.
Yeah, I definitely think
it does. Yeah,
I think
Matt
there's
Mercer effect.
Yeah, Matt Mercer effect. I guess I never got into Matt Mercer effect because I'm just like, I don't watch actual plays, so I'm just gonna do DMing. I base all my DMing on my dad. So whenever my dad's like, here's this really cool puzzle, I'm like, I want to do a cool puzzle, and then I just fail miserably at making puzzles. I was like, here's this door, and you saw an H and a Q, and in a different place, and then on the puzzle door there's these circles, slashes, and boxes, and the thing is you have to make a Q with the circle and the dash, and then an H is a box, like it's a square, because for me an H is a square, a capital H is a square, and they just didn't get that. They're like, wait, what do you mean an H is a square? And I'm like, but am I crazy? Like an H is a square. And they didn't like that puzzle. They stared at it for like a good 30 minutes, like, what do we do? And I'm like,
it's kind of a trope on the D&D subreddits about how the party, well, any individual person in your DMing, and the individual player is as bright as can be. The party is dumb as a bag of rocks. Like when you put a puzzle out there, they just you're like, it's so obvious, and yet they all like they just stumble around with, it's just very, very hard for them.
Yeah.
Even basic puzzles. You think 5 people's minds or whatever, you better have a pretty challenging puzzle, because no, it actually doesn't scale that way. You should do an easier puzzle than you would give one person,
Yeah.
strangely enough.
Yeah, like I really want like puzzles to be cool and like make traps cool, but as soon as you have like a rogue or someone who can just like roll to undo traps, it's like less fun. Because like, oh, I disarm it.
So Bob the World Builder, although it was for picking locks, but you could use it for traps as well.
Yes.
He has a pretty clever homebrew that he just posted about. I think it was a new video about making skill checks for lockpicking better, more interesting, more game-like. I thought that was quite good.
Yeah, and he based it on...
It's a little involved. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, he based it on the lockpicking in Elder Scroll Oblivion 4.
Is that where you twist
right,
it?
Yes. Right.
Twist the lock where you until it breaks.
You use you use up picks, and you have to hit each tumbler, and so he's got a way of deciding how complicated the lock is, so how many tumblers it has, and then there's like a certain chance of failure on each tumbler, and it's pretty clever.
And you can spend sneak attack dice to undo critical failures, and it's good. There ought to be more like that. By the way, I have found a lot of, since we're sharing DM little puzzle tips, I found a lot of use from sliding coin puzzles. They work quite well. Groups seem to be able to reason with them better because it's actual physical objects on the board, and if you let them kind of try out things, without it really sort of triggering the device, it can be pretty collaborative and interactive. So alethis.net, if it's the first search result from sliding coin puzzles, has a lot of quite good ones. And I've used several.
Here we are again, porting mini
and they work with like dwarven doors and stuff. It's what people would do with that. What's that?
Here we are again, porting mini games, right?
That's right. Yeah, we got to make sure we talk about that today and get that set up.
Ah. Well, we're waiting for Ren. If Ren comes back, then we can actually do some playing. If Ren doesn't come back, then we'll just be chit-chatting for the rest of the hours.
Yeah, we're certainly we're low today.
Yeah,
Are we?
What's up?
So for travel, are we reverting to hex crawling, or are we?
I'm just gonna do my normal traveling of describing what you're doing, and like if you make camp, and then there might be an encounter. That's how I normally do traveling. Sometimes I'm just like, you get there, because it depends on what the players are into. Because if the players are like, I want to solve the mystery that we're getting sent out to do, I just kind of cut traveling down. But if it's like if traveling is part of the quest, like going to Jamal is, then it's like, okay, well, let's elaborate a little bit on that and get kind of into it. I don't have my Yahtzee dice to play random encounter Yahtzee.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting too. Like, it's a good way. I mean, you really don't want us to pick up on it if it's what you're doing, so maybe I should keep my mouth shut. But it may be in another campaign. The way that you run traveling to a place can help set it up for what you want to happen when we get there, right? So, if we've depleted all of our energy and our resources, and then we encounter, the Elithids or whatever, versus like, oh, well, yeah, we rest every night on the way, and, we still got those 800 bags of flour and whatever.
Yeah, I had...
What I would... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What I would wish I would do, but I think I've done it like once, out of like once every 20 times the party travels, is because I'm thinking about too many things. But what I would wish I could do is be basically telling a story about the dynamic of changing events in the world, based on small change. I mean, these aren't necessarily things that are relevant to what their quest is or what they're doing or not, but if they've heard about increased bandit activity in an area, and you pass on the road some farmers who have given up, and they've got everything in their cart and they are heading to the nearest town to try and make their way, in a more stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think the players really appreciate it, but it takes a lot. I could do it improvising, but I have to remember to do that and not have too much other stuff on my mind.
Yeah.
And I tend not to want to do it with pre-prep because then that takes gigantic amounts of time to pre-prep it,
The guys on WebDM they're big into that. Like, just like the weirdest sort of nuances, like, oh, look at all of the, the deer here, right? And that's because this giant creature that usually hunts the deer was killed by the person you're going to talk to right now, right? Like there's all of these sort of intricacies that, like,
And I lean very heavily
too much for this.
I lean very heavily on like mood boards because I do a lot of online. Both my campaigns are online, so like I go and find a picture and be like, this is kind of what it looks like, and I'll describe it more in depth. And I just go and I'm like, what's a good magic plane that is what I want it to look like? Like I'm like, it's gonna be a Greek plane. Then it's gonna be go to Theros and like find some really nice Theros maps, art and stuff, because it gives this really wide breadth of this is what I'm generally thinking it is, and without getting rid of a lot of the using up a lot of prep time, leaning on some art from online and being like, hey, this is like a real place, or this is a magic land art. If people know magic, they'll be like, oh, hey, I have that art. But it's still really helpful to paint pictures or to show like this is what I'm thinking about, because I don't have a great imagination. Like for me, I can't like when someone says, oh, what does this person look like? I give them very factual things, but I can't recall the picture of their face, if that makes sense. So for me, having the art there and be like, hey, this is what I am actually thinking. Here's a picture of Notre Dame, and this is what the cathedral looks like. It works better for me than trying to explain it and give this really nice, pretty picture. Also, Ren's back. Hi, Ren.
Yes, this is why I didn't want to stream. The stream would have just gone down hard. I don't know what it is about Spectrum. I really can't make it out. I do the same thing with mood boards, but mainly just for graphic design projects. And I was having a conversation with somebody who was like trying to make their own logo, and it was very much well, get shit together you think works for the palette you're trying to create, and from that palette make something, and I don't know, it's an interesting prospect. It makes me wonder if we had enough of a following to have fan artists, if fan artists would have a fun time taking those little mood boards and turning them into something.
We had Matthew's friend.
We did.
I don't know why I don't know why I'm so like inclined to call him Matt. I think I know too many Matts.
I do.
Anyway.
I know some Matts, and I know a Matt who goes by both Matt and Matthew. He's my cousin, so like I'm used to using them interchangeably. So, but yeah.
Let's travel.
Let's
do this.
We were just let me unzoom your Discord so people can actually see all of Roll20. Go.
And DM, Fairfuss, since we're in this rocky terrain, survival, nature, history, all of it. I'm just picking at rocks, tasting them. Just let me know anytime. Assume I'm tasting a rock.
Assume you are tasting a rock. Okay. So what you taste is basalt. This is mostly like hard bedrock sort of cliffside that you're walking around. And I'll get
if he ever does that, if Verfa ever does that, and the rock has any kind of lichen on it or moss or anything like that, you could expect a kind of violent reaction from Jarl. Jarl would be like, "What are you doing?" And he'd like push it, slap it out of his hand or something, like that could kill you. That stuff, because where he's from, all of that stuff, you never know what it could possibly do. He's got very select stuff in his pouch. It's foolhardy.
Foolhardy indeed. So
when it comes to lichen, Fairfuss all about the enzymes. That's how they communicate.
He's like
certainly a fool who is hardy. So I mean that tracks.
All right. So you're walking around this cliffside. It's a decently long trek. The the road that you're taking is well traveled. You can see a lot of cartwheel grooves. You can also see a lot of evidence, of previous towns that were there that have kind of, been abandoned because maybe the land routes, that the land routes aren't traveled well, mostly because overland routes there's a lot of monsters hanging around nowadays. Whether they're wizard creations like owl bears or if they're just mutated eagles that are giant now since the shattering. So
What?
it's just
That's just those foul creatures you told me about. Can we travel by night? They can't see in the dark, can they?
Do you tell them?
You've heard of dire hawks. Have you heard of dire hawks?
Dire Hark squared.
Dire rocks.
But yeah, so you kind of pass by a lot of what would have been trading towns on trade routes that have kind of been abandoned or left with a few standing cottages that no one lives in anymore because a lot of these villages could not be sustained by the overland travel, which has decreased in the last 20 years. So you pass by a lot of ghost towns. You can stay the night in some of them. They offer really good shelter from the rain. And since you're on you're on the seaside, so you get a lot of that salty air and a lot of crusted over boardwalks and all that kind of things that you're seeing on the cliffs, or not boardwalks, but just houses. And some of the signs are like closed for the season, but they never open because that's the hallmark of seaside villages. We're closed for the season, aka forever. Sort of deal. And you can get the feeling that going through these areas that these aren't the most hospitable places in the winter time. During the spring, summertime, you still see some mounds of snow melting off in the distance, or some trees that haven't quite filled out their leaves or are budding yet. You get the feeling that in the winter these places are pretty inhospitable because they're on the northern reaches of the continent. You could see Verfa licking a rock. Yes. So, you are walking on the cliffs. When you lick the rocks, Verfa, you are licking the rocks. You can definitely tell these are some sedimentary. They're very weathered rocks. Like a lot of this is what you would classify as like bedrock. Like there's no soil here. It's just a lot of rocks, some like a very thin layer of dirt on, and then grass growing on it, but not a lot of trees because there's just not a lot of soil from erosion over time.
Can I tell if there is a, is this the rock face that we're sort of walking along? Was that an extant rock face pre-shattering, or is this as a result of the shattering that this sort of geographical feature has emerged?
It kind of seems like most of it is a natural sort of cliff face that it naturally has occurred over time, but then the shattering might have, broken parts of the cliff face off to make it even more jagged and treacherous, I guess you could say. You can kind of see out in the bay big chunks of land that have kind of fallen into the sea and just kind of stayed there because the sea maybe wasn't quite as high as it looks or something, and it just there's just these big chunks of rock and dirt just in the ocean hanging out. So yeah, that's your geology lesson of the day.
Yeah, I'll turn to Jarl and say these rocks are fresh, and then but by fresh I mean like in the last 12,000 years or something.
Hey, that's pretty fresh and geographical.
Yeah.
Jarl's starting to take Verfa as representative of all above ground dwarves, which is probably not very accurate, but he sort of looks at him like, yeah, fresh as can be. Yeah, he has no idea what he means. But he's trying to play along and be more dwarf-like.
I feel like he takes the rock and tries to sniff it. Like, yes, yeah, that's a fresh rock, all right.
Yeah, sort of try to pinch it a little bit, sort of squeeze it in your hand like about fresh. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I see what you mean.
Have that back.
Should, yeah. I'm looking forward to us encountering real dwarves out in the world. So, we're kind of headed the wrong way, but who knows?
Oh, you never know.
Who knows what Jamal will bring, right?
Yeah.
A wayward dwarf licking rocks.
The dwarves are in quite a diaspora around the world because of their home areas either flooding or a lot of the mines collapsing and the earthquakes. So you find dwarves all over the place. Just not like very huge large pockets of like countries of dwarves. Just like little, little Zuraktur in Jamal or little Zuraktur in like Cheshire or something like that.
All right.
Yeah. So you're kind of going across the coast. Here, I will
See,
move back to the map so you can see where you are.
What's the weather like?
The weather, it's quite temperate. It's a little bit windy, considering it is kind of later spring. So you get a lot of the wind off the sea, bringing in cold air. But also there's wind going the other way because it's warm air going past. Like there's just a lot of wind. You're kind of walking around. You kind of saw that there's some forest off in the distance, and you can just see those trees just whipping and shaking and shifting all about because it's spring and it's windy. So yeah. So going along this coast, as you go farther down this this land route, you kind of start to see that it gets a little bit more overgrown, a little bit less traveled. It seems like maybe at this point people have turned off the road and gone south, maybe into the more heart of Cheshire. But a lot of people haven't taken the route further along this cliff path. But based on like looking at maps and kind of charting your course, this still seems like the fastest way to Jamal. But it does seem like it's getting less traveled as you go along. But yeah. So you can make camp if you wish. I mean, I presume you were making camp along the way. But
You said we saw what like seaside towns, but they're pretty much shut down.
yeah.
Okay.
You can take shelter in some of the old areas, and they don't look like they were quickly abandoned. Some of them look like they got destroyed and have been destroyed for the last 20 years, so you can kind of surmise that they got maybe a cliff fell down or something that destroyed part of the town and they just kind of got abandoned. But there's other parts that look like people moved out of them, actually. Like they made the choice to either move into a city or move away from this place at the very least. So some of the towns you can see old tables and chairs kind of just left, plates on tables, or actually old trenchers left on tables, like old bread and such, left around. And then some places are completely abandoned and they're just shells of buildings that are left. So unfortunately, there's no ale for Belgair to drink at most of these towns that is edible.
Really gonna need to find an alchemy jug for that lad.
Just one of like the jugs of never-ending water, except it's alcohol.
Well, my ultimate goal is to find and buy a tankard of sobriety and give it to him.
Oh.
Tell him it's a personal gift, and we'll see what happens when everything he puts into it becomes.
And that you'd be just so hurt if you ever saw him drinking out of anything else, because it was such a personal gift.
It's like, I got this for you, brother. Why don't you like it?
It's a symbol of my brotherly love. Please.
So, where was the witch?
The witch is in Gila right now. Last time you left her.
Okay.
She's in the capital.
And she saw Karl somewhere in or around Jamal.
What she saw was in her cabin, she met a dwarf that was wearing the same garb as Haya. So you can kind of surmise that it was Karl because Haya is wearing like Underdark stuff. And then she's then confirmed that it was Karl, and she said that she had seen him at her cottage going east, like 2 or 3 seasons ago.
And we have no idea where her cottage actually is, right?
No, you don't know where her cottage is. You kind of surmised that he might have been going to Jamal because knowing the geography of geography, geography, the social geography of the world, that Jamal is kind of known as a hive of scum and villainy, where it's kind of no holds bar sort of city, where a lot of law breaking refugees go to kind of make their fortunes or to just lay low. So you're like, oh, that makes sense. Karl would go there. So that's why you're on your road to Jamal.
Okay. And then how close is that forest to us? Like, I mean, is it like we just see like treetops like way out there, or is it, like
Let me get my marker.
In a day's travel, could we get to it?
So you're kind of right here. So you're kind of in the midpoint of what you think is between you and the what do you call this? The border of Jamal. And I would say like the forest, you can kind of see it. It's kind of like over here in this area. Like you can see it a way off. It's on some hills. Like off this, let me explain this a little better. I apologize. So you're on this cliff road, and it's kind of this plateau, and then it starts to climb into some more mountainous terrains, and on those mountainous terrains is the forest. So you're kind of on a flat, and then there's foothills, and then there's more mountainy sort of high hills, and they have trees on them.
Okay.
Kind of like a Black Forest look sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got haunted forest and a city full of miscreants. This bodes well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Fairfa's thought, I guess, is, if we're assuming that this witch's house, hut, whatever, is out in the forest, I think. Do we know it's in a forest?
It's kind of just in the wooded sort of prairie areas around Gila. Like there's pockets of wood around Gila and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But not like a very thick forest, like Black Forest-esque.
Yeah. So maybe Verfa is talking this out with Jarl, right? That, trying to suss out whether Karl would have come through that forest that we can see, because it's darker, right? It's not underground, but it maybe offers some protection from the sky and the giant birds that we're all afraid of.
Rightly so. Yeah. If the thing is, I think you're reasoning it out properly, but kind of don't know our way around up here, and it's kind of the choice, right? If there's no established path through that, is it the right strategic decision to do that versus making much better time, on the road most people take? So that's, I could kind of see it going either way, to be honest.
I have heard.
And if I recall correctly, sorry, could I just ask DM?
Yeah.
Do I recall correctly that they don't really travel through the forest, right? There aren't main roads that.
Yeah.
That's not. It's usually along the coast. Is that what
usually
we learned
along the
last
coasts
time?
or in like open fields? There's not a lot of overland travel in general, but when there is overland, you've noticed that it's either through like former farmland that's starting to get like roughly populated with woods, or coastal trails, but a lot of it is outside of mountains and trees. Mountains and forests, and anything that could potentially harbor evil things are kind of steered clear of.
So
yeah, and I guess I'd say that for me and my brother, we have no problem venturing in the Underdark through the wild, what would be passed for the wilds down there, but up here, that's, I think, sticking with civilized paths is something we'd be quite a bit more comfortable with.
So Jarl, would it be worth stopping at, these little villages along the way to see if, there's that one straggler, innkeeper operating his little lighthouse or whatever that
Right.
to see if Karl might have stopped off at any of these little villages along the forest.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. Do we know if he was traveling alone?
You
Did she
didn't
say whether he was traveling alone?
You didn't get much information from the witch in that regard. She did not mention
Okay.
that he was with a group. She just said, I saw this dwarf, and I noticed this dwarf because he was a Drugar, or Drugar, or however you say it. So it's like, I noticed this Underdark dwarf because he was weird. So,
Right. Yeah, if he's traveling alone, he would not have ventured overland. He would have gone from whatever town to whatever town.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would submit that we stop at as many of these little port towns as we can. Maybe if we see no smoke coming out of chimneys, we keep moving. But yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Why
Makes
don't
sense to
we
me.
do like a little bit of like a... Let's just do a few perception rolls. Hi. Sorry, my cat just came out of the closet, so I'm comforting him. Hello, kitty. He's scared of the lawnmower people, so.
Aww.
So
Like
why
I
don't
said,
you...
I blew all of my rolls.
I got a dirty
A dirty
yeah,
20?
That's gonna be a
dirty 20 over here.
That's
Nice.
22.
Nice rollers, nice
Let's
high
see.
rollers.
What do we say? Perception. Oh, it's not good, guys. 7.
Okay. Verfa doesn't
I told
see
you,
any...
I'm rolling
I
in
wasted
D&D
all my
Beyond, by the way, if anybody.
Okay.
I wasted all my good rolls doing our ASMR dice rolling.
Mm.
That's good ASMR, right? That's how that works.
Good ASMR.
Yeah, can you add your proficiency bonus to that?
Yeah.
So with those rolls,
Charisma.
so Verfa is all about, like, he's like, okay, so we're looking for a dwarf. We need to go find rocks. Like, you're just like, you kind of default to how you would find yourself. It's like, are there little rock piles around? Okay. Like a little like breadcrumb trail, except with rocks.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
Verfa
clearly-
says that, then like Luvier's gonna look around and be like, no shortage of fucking rocks.
Yeah. Well, we're looking for a particular, out west, and he's basically going to describe Stonehenge, right? But it's, or a cairn or something, right? Like we're looking for a stack like this, and then maybe a little Stonehenge thing, or we're looking for a stack like this, and he's describing a cairn. Something. Clearly, there's none of that around. So then maybe he's distracted stacking rocks himself to show what we're looking for.
Over time, you just end up going like, "Ooh, this is a nice rock," and then you just start rock stacking. And they're just like, "Okay, well, he's a lost cause." But with the 22 and a dirty 20, what you guys kind of start, like, you go to these town villages and you don't find any people. There's not a lot of people. There's no people in these villages pretty much ever at all. You might find a stray traveler who is, singleton. He looks like well equipped to fight off bandits and things, so you notice swords and shields and things. There might be a few you see one very small caravan that has more bodyguards than caravan. So they're like equipped to fight off anything that happens. But one
What
or
are they
two,
moving?
they look like they're just moving goods. Like if you ask them, they're a little bit like, why do you want to know, strange people? But getting a peek inside, you can tell that it's just kind of like crafted goods, so like normal merchant goods. So
Okay.
Are they keen to trade with us?
What would you trade?
I don't know. I gotta see what they have.
They're a little bit like, nah, you don't have the money for.
They're on a
this
mission?
stuff, yeah.
Okay.
But in a few of the towns, you do find evidence of someone I'm trying to think of like how an Underdark dwarf's signature would look like. Maybe there's some like foraged like some mushrooms that are cut that you're like, hey, those aren't something that a human would eat, like a normal person would eat.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Mm-hmm.
Jarl goes, oh hey, those are mushrooms from the Underdark. Maybe there's something like that around. But in a few places,
Absolutely.
maybe Jarl's like, oh well, this cottage looks nice and sturdy and it's pretty dark. This is probably where I would stay. And I would walk in and he sees like a little bit of a makeshift campfire that has something that looks like something that Karl might have made at some point. Or like
How many days ago does it look like that fire's been lit?
a long time.
Long
So
time.
at
Long
least at least like a month, maybe 2 months. So a decent amount, because the witch said not 3 seasons passed. So if he's moving on foot, not sure where he's going, you can kind of surmise like, okay, so maybe this is where he was this amount of time and that time amount of time. So you do see some very faint evidence of someone moving around that seems to be Karl or might be Karl from your
Okay.
understandings.
Wow.
So,
You know-
so it at least seems like somebody from the Underdark is trying to make their way along
Yes.
this relative path that we're on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's
You know, with all the bandit protection all these people have, it's entirely possible he ran into some trouble along the way. How's Karl for fighting?
None better.
Mm.
See, I handled the crowd. I was the MC, you know, and I could do some warm up acts, but he was not only one of the main attractions, but if there was anyone who seemed to struggle to come to terms with the need to pay their gambling debts, Karl was the one who paid them a visit. He could get real big, see. Not like a usual Dwergar, like real big.
Oh. I see. Well then, I guess if we find any evidence of squashed bandits from 2 months ago, might be good to look into that.
Yeah, the other thing is that he, so I'm just me to the DM, right? So because of his class, his subclass, I might find evidence of him, you know, carving into his equipment one kind of thing or another in the mornings. So he would, if he were to change out one kind of thing or another, right, he would, so there might be a little place he worked on, like his armor or his, he doesn't carry any weapons, really. I suppose he has maybe a crossbow, you know, but mostly he's just got his knuckles wrapped. So it's his equipment where he would carve things for his subclass. So there might be evidence of that.
Yeah, you definitely probably find, you know, evidence. Like if it's just like kind of looks like shaving or like some carving bits, you
Right.
can see it and be like in conjunction, in context with the other products of the site, other artifacts of the site. You can surmise that maybe this is a spot where he is, but also like anyone else looking at those carving chips might be like, oh, that's just some wood chips from when someone was making a spike or something. So, but you're like, no, I'm positive.
Right. And these are like little metal shavings. Yeah. Sure.
Given my bizarre fascination with wood that we've discovered over the course of this campaign, does this look like high quality wood, or does this look like somebody's improvising their weaponry?
Well, he basically doesn't. It wouldn't be wood; it would be metal. I'll just say.
I see. Okay. Okay.
Well, like he might carve something on a light hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe
he might carve his hammer. He has a light hammer he throws. He might carve his armor.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go.
So that's kind of you surmise that you're on, or you are on a path that he has traveled. Whether you can't quite tell how long ago it was, but you're like, yes, this definitely seems like someone who was very much probably Karl, or someone who's very similar to Karl passed through. So like you always have to leave that gap of you don't actually know, but it's probably true. But yeah, so as you're, making camp and looking at these things, you come across this spot in the path that looks like it used to be some sort of shrine. There's some ruins on the edge, and the cliff is much closer to the path. It's kind of late in the day at this point, so maybe you're getting ready to head off to sleep or something. You're about like right. Yeah.
I was going to say, if we can find a place where we think we can sort of securely long rest, I can use that opportunity to redo my infusions.
I can
and
get
work
my
on
PP
that.
back.
Yeah, I can work on that.
Sounds not great until you realize I mean PowerPoints.
Yeah. Jarl, did you had a hammer or something you want to come back to when you throw it?
If you'd be so kind. That
Of course.
He can't contain his excitement about this idea. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I'm excited to get working on it, but yeah, he's excited to get working on it, but he needs his 40 winks.
He's 40 winks. So you're kind of coming. So by this point, you might have rested, and it's been about a week of travel, a week of overland travel. So you're kind of exhausted. You've been sitting in these huts, and that's fine. This area is, it's getting a little bit dark. There's a well-worn path on the. Oh, maybe, yeah. I'll just you'll see it in a second. Well-worn path along the cliff, and then there's a path going off. And on the side towards the water, there's this shrine area that looks like it used to be maybe a spot for a temple or or at least some place for sacrifices to a sea god, maybe.
Sea gods.
Sea gods. And I will move you to this spot. And yeah, that's what you see.
This looks like an encounter.
I don't know what you're talking about. I totally only use maps when there's encounters. Totally don't do that. But yeah.
We're walking along and like, oh, there's a grid laid out in the grass. Look at this. That's a little suspicious.
But yeah.
I feel like we're each supposed to stand inside one of these at a time.
You're supposed to stand over there. You're like, this is perfect social distancing. You're about 5 feet away from me. Okay.
Nice.
I think I could run exactly that far in 6 seconds. I don't know what tells me that.
But yeah, so you kind of see this like area. Here, you can drag your guys on. I'll drag your guys on for you.
Yeah, I'll do that here.
And you can kind of settle down where you wish to settle down for the night.
What are those sort of hatched circles? Are those?
They're kind of
like
pillars.
Some kind of pillar?
Yeah,
okay.
They're kind of pillars. They're kind of broken off at the top. It looks like there was a little gazebo here, and maybe these are like walls around, maybe somewhat of a temple. You can tell this area in particular, the stonework from your expertise in stonework, you can tell that this wasn't, and just looking at the walls, wasn't a well-built sanctuary or a well-built like area of worship. So probably when the shattering hit, a lot of this pretty much just fell pieces. So there's some walls still standing, but a lot of it, is just scattered around, and has kind of, most of this stuff was sandstone, so a lot of it has already degraded over time from just the salt and the wind. But you can still kind of see, like, this spot is a place maybe they would put offerings, or there was a statue, and there's just some walls looking around.
So with Jarl's tactical thinking, he would probably pick this little curved bit of wall back here as a place where we would set up a camp. We're a little removed from the road. We have some good cover that direction.
And
there's also the high ground to the east, but I probably wouldn't pick that.
Not as good coverage, yeah.
Yeah, over here.
Is there something up there on that? Do we see?
You can you can just roll me like a general. All three of you can roll me like a general perception.
I think that's just the watermark. But
Patreon.
Sure.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about. I thought you were talking about the cliff, but that's fine. But yeah, over north here. So this is orientated north south. To the north is the sea, so it goes off a little bit, and then it just kind of goes into a cliff. Hi, are you gonna jump down and say hello? Hello.
Ah, I see. Oh, I see. Yeah, so just a 7 for me.
So you
10.
don't. So you
18.
don't see.
Yeah, right.
All right.
18.
18, 10. So with the 10 and below, you don't really see like a lot of interesting things. Jarl might pick out a few trees and be like, "Oh, those are nice sturdy trees." Maybe Ren does too. Ludvier. But you kind of surmise that this is a good defensible position, and you don't see any signs of creatures. You might see some signs of, bandits or people taking shelter for the night in the area, like dropped ale bottles or, a campfire that was previously used. But other than that, you don't see much of anything. But Verfa, you got like a 20, you said, or
What did I say?
18?
15 and 3s. Yeah, 18.
18. So with an 18, you can kind of see some creature tracks in the little bits of dirt. Um,
Can I do a survival to see what they are?
yeah, sure. So you kind of see some tracks in the dirt, like you don't see it in the grass. Some they might be a little bit more lighter on their feet, but definitely in the dirt you can kind of see an imprint of some feet.
So for survival, I got 14.
14. Okay. So you kind of see these are bird. They look like bird feet. Um, Not really huge bird feet, bigger than chickens. I'm trying to think how big turkey feet are. Just like they're like that big. Like they're decent, like ostrich size feet. We'll say that. So
Like,
you can tell that they're definitely birds. Like
so
bird feet, like dinosaur feet, sort of thing. But you can't. That's what you get.
so Fairfa is going to look up, and while he's looking up, he's going to scuff out the bird feet tracks with his feet, so that Jarl doesn't see them. And then he'll pull out. I have a 2-person tent, but I think if we string up the canvas, above this sort of curved thing, we can maybe squeak the 3 of us in it. Well, actually, we have more than that. We have 5, right? Wait, 4.
Yeah, we have 5 of us.
4, 5.
So
Yeah.
If they're not here, then they can be put in a bag of holding. That's what
Yeah,
I'm.
yeah.
Well, I mean, do we have more tents between the
Oh yeah.
5 of us?
I'm sure.
Um,
I'm sure
we got
Valgair. Can
You know.
Valgair summon the tiny hut?
Balgair might be able to summon the tiny hut. I'm not sure if Balgair has Lehman's tiny hut.
we
But it should be called
we did
Balgair's tiny
get
hut.
supplies too, right?
So you probably picked up.
I think supplies would have included the camping stuff.
You
Yeah,
probably picked up a
so
tent.
I'm gonna this isn't gonna be a Matthew level illustration here, but I think maybe hempen rope across, tie on that guy, and then string up our tarps as like a
Yeah, we got the pillar there too.
a big old tent.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So, because I'm going to keep us covered for Jarl's sake.
Yeah. So, are people taking watches, I presume?
Yes. So if we've got 5 of us, right, we can each take a couple hours, and that'll give Verifa time to do his infusions as well as get everybody their 8 hours sleep, right?
All right. Sounds good.
And we could let one of the non people who's not present skip a watch, right? So then we just do 8 hours, right? Just to
I
keep
could do
it a little
4
simpler.
hours for long rest as well. So if we need that, it can happen.
Oh, that's nice. All right, so why don't we say you do 2 watches and Luke and I do the other two. And Haya and Balgar, they just decided they were. Balgar was running all day. Let's face it, right? He doesn't like to ride a horse.
He was running and
or a
drinking,
pony,
probably.
right? Yep, yep.
Honest to God, we
And
got
for
to get
whatever
that guy to
reason,
turn into a
Haya
horse.
decides to get along nicely.
Yeah. Okay. So whoever is doing the first watch, give me a perception.
I suppose Fairfa would, because then he can rest after.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
And he wants to make sure that the bird situation is well in hand. Right.
I'll do the second watch,
Yeah.
and Ren can do the last two. How about that?
The irony is that one of the infusions that I want to make is repeating shot with that crossbow I got at the palace. But can't do it till after I rest. So, all right.
I did a read through of the infusions recently, and the repulsor shield is just, oh my god.
I only have enhanced weapon, returning weapon, repeating shot, and homunculus servant.
Oh, they get good, man. That's all I have to
Yeah.
say. They get insane.
So wait, Luke, does that mean maybe you should do the last rest? Because then you would have that stuff as soon as you wake up. You'd have it available.
Oh, the last,
during your rest,
last watch.
or no? If you do the last watch, right? Then is that stuff basically available as soon as you start your watch period? I don't know how long it takes.
Yeah, I mean, how long does it take to make an infusion? I guess it depends on what it is. Let's see. Where is that infuse item? Doesn't really say.
I think I always
Then it's kind of a negligible amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, I would think if I'm watching while I'm making my infusions, I would argue that I would have disadvantage on a perception
then
check.
maybe we shouldn't do that. Right. So let's go with the original plan. You watch first. You'll get your long rest. We don't get the infusions until the morning when we set off, assuming you do get a long rest. All right. I'll watch second, and Ren will watch third.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, is Luke rolling something here?
Yeah, rolling perception.
So I'm gonna
Get
watch
my
out
PP
here.
reset. It's nice to have 17 PowerPoints again. My God.
and 3, 16.
16. Okay. Let me do a thing.
Oh no. There's an encounter map and the DM is doing a thing.
So you don't really hear anything throughout the night. You're kind of looking around, watching. Most of the sounds you hear are just the ruffling of leaves and the grass coming from the wind that's coming off and hitting the cliff side. So you can just kind of hear this whistling loud noise and the tree rustling. But nothing that you see, really.
All right.
All right.
You waking me up?
Yep.
Oh, I hate to watch in the middle of the night. Okay.
You'd think you'd like it. It's dark out.
Foul eye in the sky is gone. All right. So roll perception there, DM.
Yeah.
Ooh, not bad.
All right.
That's a huge 10.
What'd you get?
17.
17?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're kind of, I presume. Oh, I can't move you because I'm not on the right thing. I presume you're kind of in the same spot as Verfa was, kind of like sitting on the edge of the tent, leaning against the rock, kind of looking out to see if you can catch anything. I presume.
Mm-hmm.
So over the rustling of the grass and the leaves, you kind of hear the kind of a strange flapping noise of wings, And you kind of hear the touchdown. Well, you see the touchdown of one bird on a rock. It's a very weird looking bird, will say, but it is a bird nonetheless. And you kind of hear the kind of like a squawk sort of noise landing on um, something just out of your eyesight.
In the same direction as the first one?
More from this this direction. So if I can get my...
I'm not seeing.
Let me get my thingy out. So you see this guy, and then
Yeah.
you hear something off into this area, but you can't quite see it, but you do hear it.
I don't know why it's not showing up on my map. Do I need to be out?
Oh, I'm
further?
doing. Do you see my little arrow? Do you see my arrow?
I'm looking for the ping. I don't see it.
Oh, do you see my arrow now? Arrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was on the wrong layer. Why it actually shows things. So you see this guy, but you don't see there's typing.
Yes, there's furious typing.
There is something off into this direction that you can't quite see, but you definitely hear lands on some sort of stone. You kind of hear the scraping of talons against stone.
Okay, and what is weird about the bird thing that landed on that rock that I can see?
So this bird is not really. It's kind of. Most of it looks like a regular bird, it's a medium size, so it's a big bird, but it has like elk horns and kind of like a deer face. It's a
Weird.
bizarre creature that blends the body and wings of a bird of prey with the head of a stag.
God, I knew it. Knew this traveling overland was going to be a problem. I'm going to. It looks like Ren is sort of right behind me, so I'm gonna sort of tap him. Lud, is that? Yeah, that's Lud. Yeah, I'm gonna sort of tap him with my quarterstaff and say quietly, "We got company. Wake the others."
All right, and I guess I'll in order to do this silently, I'll just establish telepathic link with Verfa and go, "Get the fuck up! It's time to get up."
I feel like
he'll stir from his sleep mid-dream, sort of muttering in his sleep, and he'll just yell, "Perryton!"
What did
he
yell?
To imagine
Perryton. He's dreaming of a. He just happens to be dreaming of a deer-headed flying creature.
Jarl has no idea what these things are.
I just imagine that if you tell
they're just the creatures from his worst nightmares at the moment.
Well, I mean, you dream about what you think about before you go to sleep, right? So he sees he saw the footprints.
He saw the tracks, right?
Imagine if you telepathic link to somebody while they're sleeping. It's just like the deer bird just its head turns and looks at you and goes, "Get the fuck up."
Or just, I feel like if it's a stag, it doesn't have like a normal bird call. It's how like reindeers call, where they just like the trumpet, like the high pitched sort of trumpet. Then you're just like, oh. So.
All right.
So, and we're waking High and Balgar as well, I presume.
I'll do the same thing and just bounce my link to them and just be like, "You gotta get up. You gotta get up." For Balgar, I'll go, "There's alcohol, I swear. Get up. You've been dry for too long. Get up."
And I'm just keeping my eye on the one that I can see and trying to listen as hard as I can for any other noise from what's behind me.
Okay. So as you're kind of listening, you kind of hear the flappings of wings. It sounds like this one is sounds like the one that you cannot see is flying, but this one seems to be the one that you can see seems to be kind of like jostling about. He kind of does a little hop to this other to this other wall, and is kind of just hanging around.
DM, just
I'm
to
going to
get this
draw
out of the
one of my. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
Oh,
Luke.
I was gonna say, just to get this out of the way, so that like we're on the same page. I want to be on my mantle of command, focused on my mantle of command discipline, and I want to just go ahead and cast inertial armor so that I have some AC.
Okay.
And can I assume that there's some sort of like brush, like maybe like a tree branch or something laying around, like a falling off a tree or
Yeah.
piece of bush or something?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so then I'll.
Did you walk out of the tent?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just
He stirred.
Maybe
maybe we're all kind of by the
Verifo
entrance.
tried to walk out, I might have. If he walked anywhere near me, I would have probably put an arm out. Because
I'm still in the tent.
Noticed they don't. I'm not sure they know we're here.
Right.
Because I think he'd have to walk by me, or it depends on what you say. But I would have tried to stop that, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so maybe the rest of us are sort of like peering out the what we've established as the door flap of the tent.
Yeah.
And then Jarl
Right.
is just outside of it. That makes sense.
And then I'm just under it. This is my watch point, right? Just so I can kind of look around. So I've taken my light hammer out of my belt. So I'm ready to wing it at this thing if necessary.
And okay, sorry, go ahead.
silence. What are you saying?
If I forgot. So Jarl is the only one that has actually seen them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm ready to proceed.
But if Lud has come up next to me, everybody gets probably a chance to look themselves, and maybe I could quietly point, where there's the movement in the dark. I have dark vision. Verifa has dark vision. I'm not sure about the rest of us.
I also have dark vision.
So
we can ask questions about how a human has dark vision and needs 4 hours of sleep later.
And the other thing I'm going to do is DM. I'm just when Haya gets up, I'm going to gesture to the other end of the tent. Let me see if I can ping. Sort of if there's a place. Am I pinging? No, I'm not. Ping.
You just click and hold down on objects and tokens layer.
All right, hold on. I don't know why I'm not. Anyway, you see where the pillar and the end of this little arc wall is?
Right here?
I'm going to gesture to Haya to kind of watch actually the opposite end from that.
Just here.
Oh, okay.
Kind of did it there. There we go. Sort of over there, because I want him to be looking. So I'm just basically going to say, take that point. Look out that direction.
Okay.
I guess I'm assuming that the tent flap goes down to the ground on the other side, up here,
Yeah.
So that we have a little bit more opening on this side. This is the kind of lean-to style that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So has Jarl noticed that they are flying creatures and just is trying to keep us calm? Okay.
Weird looking birds. Yeah, exactly. I'm on high alert. I don't know whether I've got to make a wisdom saving throw at some point or not.
Cool.
All right. So yeah, I mean, Fairfield will peer over his shoulder so he can see what's out there,
Man.
and then seeing
God,
that
I
they
wish I
are
had.
flying creatures.
This makes me wish I had one more level so I could have a psi limiter of 5. I have a great ability for this, but it's just not accessible to me right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess Fairfa needs. I need more of what how Jarl reacts.
Yeah, well, I think DM. I think I do need to make a wisdom. If you'd say wisdom, I'm not sure it'd be something else. Saving throw here, or I'm gonna have
Yeah.
Yeah.
some.
It'd
I don't
be
know
wisdom.
whether the disadvantage would apply to attacks, but okay, I'm gonna go ahead and make that now. I was gonna think at the start of combat, but let me make it now here.
Okay. If you do it now and
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. I would have
Hey,
said
I got a 16.
nice. If you
Nice.
had like failed on it, I would have been like you had a disadvantage for your initiative because you're a little bit shell shocked. Like, oh, there's
Okay.
birds. I don't
Oh,
know
I
what to
see.
do.
Sure.
So it's not like a big
Right. Okay.
deficit, but still like something would have happened.
So
Okay.
another.
Appreciate that.
So
Yeah.
I guess I also have a DM sort of world building question,
Yes.
which is are I mean are we assuming that these creatures are of malintent, or is there a potential that they're like just reindeer walker that can fly versus wandering around, you know what I mean?
So like Peritons, I would say from your understanding, like maybe your trying to think of like Verfa would probably because reading folk tales and things. Maybe Belgair knows this. We're gonna say Belgair knows this because he likes folk
Yeah.
tales.
Right.
He has, and he lived in a mountainous area. So Peritons are known to be kind of not necessarily like pretty much classified as chaotic evil, but they just are hungry. They're kind of classified in like the similar as like dragons, where they just like we're gonna do our own thing, and if it means eating humanoids, we're going to do that. Like Balgar might like be shaking and like talking. He's like, they tear out people's hearts. Like they go for the heart. You don't go near them because they'll tear because they're known for like killing you, eating you, and then like taking the heart specifically and taking it back to their
What did I
nests.
say? What did I say, everybody? Exactly as I said.
Right.
Does Balgar know if
Why
they're
do you
intelligent?
live up here?
Balgar says that they are quite mindless.
Quite mindless. Okay.
So that answers my question. I'm thinking whether I could cast speak with animals and then reason with them. But
you kind of surmise that they're monstrosities rather than an animal.
They have they noticed us?
You can kind of
So
see.
is it clear to me that they've noticed us?
This guy, a second Periton, the one that you heard, has kind of landed on this, on this wall. This guy seems like, this green one seems like it's kind of scooting closer to you, kind of they definitely see you. Whether they're preparing right now for attack or just kind of inquisitively looking at you and kind of sizing you up. From like Belgar's discussion of it and maybe Verfa's knowledge of Peritons, they tend to go for humans, like taller humanoids, rather than like dwarves. So maybe they're just kind of like looking at you like, you aren't quite what we usually eat, but you kind of look tasty. Kind of sizing you up, sort of look.
How many of them are in my field of view?
From your field of view, you can probably see both of them.
Okay, so 2 of them? All right.
Yeah, 2 of them.
I'm going to use a couple side points and use read moods.
Okay.
So, as a bonus action, I get a 1-word summary of up to 6 creatures I can see. So, what are they feeling? They don't need to be smart for me to do this.
What are they feeling? They're feeling hungry.
Okay, so not violent, just hungry.
Yeah. But they're quite like when you look at
predatory.
When you're like feeling their mood, you definitely get the sense that they are hungry, and they are, in a hunting sort of mood. Like they're in hunt mode.
Okay.
Oh.
I will turn to Jarl and Verfa, and I'll just go, we might be able to get out of this. They're not certain. They're just hungry.
Hold on one second.
What does Balgar think of that?
Balgar's like, yeah, of course they're
That
hungry.
assessment.
They're gonna eat us. Like
Do
Balgar, of course
So-
they're hungry. They're gonna eat us. That
Farfa's
seems
gonna
like a very
ask.
Balgar
That's-
statement.
Farfa's gonna ask Balgar what do they eat?
He says they eat people and they eat humanoids. He kind of talks about, like, I've heard, like, they specifically, from his knowledge, they feed on any creature, but it prefers humanoids or humans, especially like elves, half elves, and humans. And then it specifically rips out a prey's heart after it eats, and
Okay.
it takes the hearts and brings it back to its nest. So, and he might say, like, oh, I've heard stories of in other villages, when you see a prairie tin attack, everything is damaged, and they just have this big hole where their heart's supposed to be, and it's just a hole. Imagine that in a Scottish accent, and I feel like it would work better, but...
Okay, Jarl, do you have any more of those mushrooms?
Yeah.
Okay.
The ones I gave to Balgar, sure.
Yeah. All right. Can I have a couple of them?
I'm gonna.
Okay, I'm gonna keep my eye on these things while I kind of reach into my pouch and I kind of find my little linen bag inside there with these mushrooms in it. I sort of reach it back behind my shoulder here. He's kind of waving there. It's great. Take as many as you need. Don't know why you do that at a time like this.
Yeah,
He has
so
no idea what you're thinking.
Verfa will take 2 decent size ones,
Okay.
and then I'm gonna do magical tinkering and use my alchemist supplies, and I probably have some sort of syringe or injector or something. And I'm going to do the magical tinkering so that they can emit an odor. And the odor that they will emit will be, like a freshly dead corpse.
Okay.
Good. Shit.
And then I'm going to... I have 2 of those left. So then I'm going to toss them... So it emits the odor for 10 feet. So I'm going to try to throw them to sort of that area in between the 2 of them, that they're close enough that they will smell them and hopefully... eat the mushrooms.
So, like, kind of here and, like, in this area?
Yeah.
Well, if you've got 2, you could throw one here and one here.
One to each of them, yeah. So,
Yeah.
trying to sort of chum them.
Okay. Roll me a quick, like, dex... roll to hit with and add your dex, like you're throwing it.
Okay. Would roll 1 for each of them, or just
yeah,
one
roll
total?
1 for each of them.
I can't think like a reasonable way to help you, so you're on your own for this one.
You don't have a slingshot? So they were both?
I carry darts. I don't think that's gonna help.
Okay, so I have just a straight dex.
Yeah.
Plus
I don't think you're
3.
proficient in throwing mushrooms.
Okay, I rolled a pair of 13s plus 3 to each would be 16 each.
So 16, yeah, they go where you wanted them to go. It was more of rolling to see if you drastically failed and you dropped one in the tent or something.
Yeah. And then it smells like rotting meat and they come flying at us.
Yeah. So you drop these mushrooms.
No certainty if they can,
So
who knows how magic mushrooms affect peritons, but
I'm doing.
we're gonna find out.
I'm doing a little
The
reading.
Magic mushrooms. Oh my god! I thought you just threw some
No,
Underdark mushrooms.
they're
but
not.
No, the magic.
No,
They're
these
not
are the
magic.
psychoactive ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Oh,
psychoactive. They're not
just
magic.
psilocybin. Yeah.
Oh boy.
So they kind of wait. Let me.
I'm just hoping they get disadvantage.
Or the effects of the confusion spell or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah. So they take the
Confusion would be great, actually. Maybe that's too much to hope for.
You know, they kind
They
of
take the bait.
they fall down. They kind of jump down. They swoop down, and they kind of pick at it. And they look like they eat it because it doesn't look like they're fooled and think it's like a heart or something. But they look like they ingest it. And then let me roll a con save for them. Sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Con save.
Everybody get back.
So one of them.
I've never done this.
One of them looks fine. This green one kind of doesn't like he kind of eats it and he kind of goes like, doesn't do a squawk. He kind of just does like cow cough. I mean, they have a stag head, so you know they kind of just like do like a little gruff cough gurgle, and it looks like this one notices that it's not food, so he's not convinced that it's not food because his con escape was big enough that he's like, oh, this is not something I want. So he pukes. He kind of just like barfs it back up and kind of goes, that's not what I want. Regurgitates it. The red one swallows it, and you can kind of see he's like doing that thing that cats do when you give them spicy things and they're like licking the top of their mouth, like what did I just have, like trying to salivate the taste away. Or like when you give a dog peanut butter, kind of that, like I have something in my mouth that I can't get rid of. And it looks like he's a little bit disorientated, or they're a little bit disorientated. I don't know if it's a he or she. So this one will probably
We're asking the important questions here on D&DMs. What's the gender of the moose birds?
They do mate, and that's why they take the hearts away. Is that they need hearts to reproduce for some reason. It's in the monster
manual.
manual.
It's like a pebble for a penguin.
Yeah.
Here, I've brought you a human heart. Congratulations. Will you marry me?
This one's enlarged.
This
one
had
black on this one.
So that one will have disadvantage on if it attacks. It'll have disadvantage.
Nice.
For the first few rounds, not all of them, but for the first few, he's like tripping.
He's woozy.
Let me get a little.
All right, I'll take it.
Might affect his flying too if he tries to fly. That would be hard to do when you're feeling that way.
Slams into these pillars and.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So
I think we should hang back for like a few seconds, not to waste the effects, but to make sure there aren't other ones hiding in the darkness that the mushrooms might draw in.
Ooh.
So you do that.
Yeah, can Haya get a perception check during this for his lookout spot?
Sure. I will roll him 2d20s at disadvantage because he does not have dark vision. He does not see anything.
Yeah.
I rolled him a 2.
So actually, I removed my
who don't have dark vision.
I removed my tinkering for both mushrooms, but if the green marked one spit it out, I guess it's still sitting there. So if another one comes on, we might get lucky. Right?
Might get lucky.
Yeah.
So they've kind of done their squawks, or yeah, I'm just gonna call them squawks. I'm trying to think of what do stags sound like? They grunt. That's what they do.
I don't know. Whatever it is, it must be staggering though.
So as these guys kind of squawk and they're kind of moving around, you notice that this guy, red guy, like doesn't care, but the green one kind of seems like he's doing a little bit of a looking around, concerned sort of thing. Like he flies back onto his perch and kind of looks around. But after a while, he kind of fluffs his feathers back up and kind of goes like, okay, nothing's going on here. You don't see any more birds coming out of the wetwork.
Do you want to try and scare them off, or do you want to go in and get them?
I could definitely try and give him a good scare. That's something I have a little bit of skill for, so I could definitely go for that if you want me to try it. I'm certainly I got a lot of energy to fuel my dramatic performance. Let's put it that way. Basically, fueled performance.
Yeah,
for an intimidation check.
And Fairfield, he's always going to err on the side of scaring him off versus killing them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If DM, since I'm a very strong character, can I do an intimidation check with strength instead of charisma?
Sure.
Like
you're
if
gonna
I were to go out there,
You're gonna do like gorilla
you
beat your
know,
chest sort of thing.
basically grab a big, branch and just sort of break it over my knee and just fling it, sort of at their feet and like, get out of here,
And
type thing.
when Jarl does this, can I fire an energy beam of thunder up into the sky to make that big booming sound? Maybe scare him off.
Give me advantage, maybe.
Sure.
And I'll do what I was gonna do earlier and cast Mage Hand and use it to pick up a branch and flap it around. So it's just this like a big fluffing branch swatting at them, basically fanning at them,
Sure. So roll me a intimidation at advantage. Yeah.
And I'm gonna burn one of my commanding presence
Okay.
to add my superiority die to whatever the result is from the advantage. So I'm gonna roll intimidation with strength twice. So let me do that.
Alrighty.
Oof, that's better. That's an 18 plus a D8 from my superiority die. So that's 22.
22? Okay. All right. Let's do a little... That's for disadvantage man. All right. And this is for... Not disadvantage man. Okay. So they both get thoroughly frightened. So you get this booming thing. You kind of beat at your chest. You kind of have a branch. And they get a little flustered. And you can tell that this guy attempts to fly. The disorientated one tries to fly away. And he kind of like flaps one wing but doesn't flap the other wing, or doesn't quite get them in concert. And he kind of like dirtles this way and kind of hits a rock, and he kind of just stays there like the green one seems to fly. Oh, oops. So he kind of flies away, and you also hear a third. There was supposed to be a third one, but you hear two sets of bird wings kind of flap away and kind of roost probably near the cliff, so it looks like they're kind of scared off a little bit. But give me a quick perception check. Everyone give me a perception check.
All of us?
Everyone?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's 18 for me.
All right.
Ooh, 21. I'm rolling well.
I
Alright,
also
alright.
got 21.
All right. So that's good, because you're not going to get surprised. So with this big display of getting sloughing off these birds, you kind of hear a different type of flapping, or more like lumbering. I don't actually know. They got wings, so they probably could fly, but they don't really fly well, I don't think. Because they don't. They give you fly.
So
They
They're
give
all
you fly
very
feet.
concerned.
So you kind of hear awkward flapping moving about, and you see a lumbering beast that is coming down from the cliffs. Or two lumbering beasts, actually.
What on earth is that?
Oh man.
So you've scared off.
What the hell are those? Oh, great.
I think I can guess, but Jarl doesn't know.
I can't tell what that is.
It
Is
is
that
Yeah,
something that
I have a mini. Here, let me show you something, by the way, because I got these for a home campaign, and I'm pretty proud of them.
It's a humanoid.
So this is what we see, I think. And the
Picture-
DM can tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Yeah.
those look so cool.
Indeed, that is
And
what
here's
it is.
the other one.
Oh, nice.
I have two different ones.
Nice.
Head of a human, body of a lion, and the wings of a dragon, with a lot of
Yep.
spikes.
That's a fuck that. That's what that is.
Given that,
would-
I need a bathroom break.
And I don't think we're actually.
Yeah,
we're,
me too.
We're coming up to 3, and I think Thomas has to go at 4. So this is a good spot to be like, we'll just leave this for next week or next time because you guys can't take on 2 manticores by yourself.
And
No,
yeah, and
not
it'd be nice
without.
to have the whole party for a fight. Yeah, exactly.
My original plan was if
So
you,
we successfully drove off the Paratons and sort of out of the frying pan into the fire, right?
yeah,
But
you made a lot of
instead
noise that
we get the
attracted.
manticores.
Yeah, that attracted the pair of manticores. So.
Oh god, don't make me break out the lethal strike combo. I don't I don't want to do it. I don't want to throw that knife.
So, all right.
With wings, man, that's the problem.
We'll take
Oh,
a
boy.
short We'll take a short restroom break, and then we can do some talking, and then we can break after that.
See you soon.
Sounds good. I'll be right back.
Alrighty.
Well, they're taking their break. Are you taking a break?
I'm gonna quickly grab a snack, and then I'll probably be back.
Cool. I have a character question. I'll DM you.
Okay, you do that.
Cool.
Let me do a thing here. Quickly. You're back. I have
And
cantaloupe.
I made myself a bourbon renewal.
What is that about?
That is a Thomas drink. I don't know where he got it, but it's bourbon, creme de cassis, lemon, bitters, and simple syrup. Pretty good.
It sounds kind of refreshing.
It is. It's a good summery one.
I will raise my glass to you with non-alcoholic beverages.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got
That's
one.
what I do.
I got one month. My next monthly appointment is when they're going to see if I have gestational stuff. If I have high glucose.
Oh, the sugar drink?
Yeah, the sugar drink. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun.
Katie just did that
Mm-hmm.
a couple weeks ago.
Fun. Did that go well?
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Good. My mom has. I don't know if hers was gestational and then it moved into like normal every day, but she does have type 2, type 1-ish, like 1.5. She had
Yeah.
insulin resistance and now her body just doesn't make any insulin.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. It's weird.
So
Made myself a bourbon renewal, Thomas.
I think I read somewhere someone said that of all the common conditions that we're aware of, diabetes is the one that we have the most still to learn about, right? In terms of why exactly it happens, why these different manifestations occur the way they do, that it's not deeply understood yet.
yeah, I kind of got caught off guard. There's a separate story. One of my fellow psychology majors in undergrad was feeling sick, and I was like, oh, what's wrong? And she's like, oh, I have really low glucose levels. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, my mom has diabetes. I can identify with that. And she's like, yeah, I have no insulin whatsoever in my system. I'm like, oh, that sucks. Like, what type are you? And she's like, oh, you can call me type 3 because I just don't have a pancreas. And I went, oh, well, that would be a reason why you have no insulin in your body. So
Right.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I've heard that even the idea that there's type 1 and type 2, if we had to do it all over again, we wouldn't actually classify them as subtypes of the same disease.
It would make insurance a lot better, I think, because my mom, like I said, my mom doesn't produce any insulin anymore, so she's reliant on pumps and shots. But because she has adult onset diabetes, they're like, well, technically your diagnosis doesn't give you pumps. And she's like, well, technically I don't produce insulin, so give me a pump.
Right.
So it's like a big insurance hassle.
Or we could solve the problem by not having private insurance anymore.
Ah, that's too radical.
It's just a crazy idea. I know it's nuts.
Oh, we're still in the We'll Be Back. Ren has disappeared on us. I presume his Wi-Fi has flickered again.
Mm-hmm.
So
are we going to schedule this mini game thing, or do we need to wait till we have all of us to try to do that?
We could probably do it until everyone is here.
Seems the perfect thing for an off Thursday,
For an off Thursday and in person, or at least mostly in person. Like if Ati's in Turkey, so he will.
When does Matthew get here?
He's got his visa, so I think it's sometime in August.
Okay.
I think we should aim for right around the start of the semester.
Okay. Nice start of the semester. And then probably...
I will say, I didn't commit, and I really still can't commit to doing D&DMs in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I could commit through the summer.
Okay.
But just because I'm chair at the same time makes things really hard. But if we look at like the last week before classes start,
my birthday.
That might make sense.
Your birthday?
No, nice.
Oh, no. My birthday's on Tuesday, so yeah. I was like, oh, the 21st is a Wednesday, so I was like, oh, it's going to be close, but no. My
How old will you be, Luke?
That's a good question. What year is it? 21. I will be 31.
You were born the year I graduated college. Oh my God.
Awesome.
I am.
No, it's not awesome. It means I'm old.
I'm 6 years his younger. I'm turning 25 in 2 weeks.
Morgan, you're not helping.
I love making all the people in my Final Fantasy guild, kind of feel old. Because I'm like, they'll be like, oh man, that was really popular in high school. And I was like, I was in 6th grade when that was popular. And they're like, oh, don't say that. I'm like,
songs are the best. Like if you name a song and everybody goes back to like when they heard that song, like when it's something that, you know, where I'm like, oh yeah, that was the school bus in 3rd grade.
Mm.
yeah.
That's, you know, that's sort of the
It's very evocative of the difference, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the we have this really young kid. He would be 20, I think, and he was talking about how he's never seen Lord of the Rings, and everyone was giving him a hard time. I'm like, you have to understand, Lord of the Rings was 2001, 2, and 3. He was like born in 2000, so he does not have any reason to have watched it unless, you know, his parents got him into it, like how most people got into Star Wars in the 90s. Like,
I was not one of those people.
So, my parents never got me into Star Wars. They never were like, oh, I need to show you the beauty of Star Wars. They were like, no, we need to show you Star Trek, and Stargate.
Yeah.
So,
For a long time, the world divided itself into those two main camps.
I remember when I got into my movie. Here, I'll just blow this up and put it over here. When I got into my movie club at undergrad, they're like, are you a Star Trekkie or are you a Star Wars man? I'm like, I like Stargate more than both, so call me a Stargate fan.
So here's the thing, yeah,
you can do both.
You can be
Stargate comes later, you know. Before Stargate appeared, there was Star Trek and Star Wars, but there was a third, which at those conventions might show up. And I only knew about it because one of my high school friends, bandmates, you know, one of my high school band friends, I should say our garage type rock band, our guitarist, was super into it because his older siblings were into it. He was the youngest of 7. And it was Doctor Who.
Ah.
Right? In the realm of science fiction. That was the third, the niche one. As against those two giants, was Doctor Who. If you were into Doctor Who.
I was thinking Babylon 5 or
Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar
Galactica was, I think it was because it was kind of just a TV show, and didn't have nearly as long of a run as Doctor Who, which is just, you know, huge run. It felt more like a kind of, you know, brief nova that sort of appeared and disappeared because we had no idea it was going to be brought back again. You know.
Battlestar Galactica was both good and bad. I remember my dad watching the 70s stuff and watching he came and he left. Ren, come back.
Ren, we hardly knew ye.
But my dad liked Battlestar Galactica, the old one and the new one. Slightly less on the new one, but that's just because it was the new one. And then he was never a really big Trekkie person, but my mom was a huge Trekkie. Like, had a cardboard life-size cutout of Commander Riker.
Oh wow!
Sort of fan.
Okay, all right.
Beard or without?
No, with beard. It was with beard.
Oh.
It was.
That's preferable in my opinion.
Jonathan Frakes needs a beard. That is 100% what he needs.
Yes, completely.
Yeah, there's a lot of those like fan conspiracy, you know, like either in story or out of story about, you know, Riker growing a beard and the effects of that.
Well, then you have like, oh, he's the mirror Riker because of this one episode, because he grows a beard, and you know the mirror episode in TOS. That means that he's not the real Riker or something like that.
Yeah.
Of course, it's
interesting when you think about it. By the way, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at Battlestar Galactica while we're talking about this. It premieres in 1978 when I was going on 11 years old, and it runs for 2 seasons. It looks like, and then there's like that weird short run sequel, Galactica 1980, which I remember at the time I didn't like. But that's really short. I mean, really short. From September 17th, 1978 until until April. It was one season. 24 episodes. There was only one season of the original Battlestar Galactica. That's amazing to me.
For like people, when I was talking to Eli, my husband, about Star Trek, he was like, so a lot of people put so much stock into TO. Like we were looking at the most money gaining, the most profitable, that's my brain, most profitable franchises in history. And Star Trek came up and it was like number of movies 13. And he was like, there's 13 Star Trek movies? Like, well, yeah, there's 5 TOS movies. He's like, wait,
Right.
there's 5? I'm like, yeah, there's 4.
No,
there's 4.
There's 6. No, there's 6 of the original cast.
Oh, there's 6? Okay. And
Yeah,
then there's the 3
yeah.
new ones, and then there's like 4 TNG, I think. It was something like
Wait,
13.
Yeah, it's 6 if you don't count. Right, it's 6, and then
And-
there's a kind of other one where the crossover thing happens.
Mhm. Yeah.
But that's really TNG.
And so I was talking to him. He's like, "Wait, how long was the original series on?" Oh, it was only 3 seasons. It was only 3 seasons
Yeah.
of, like 16 episodes, 15 episodes each.
Although,
but they were
to
very
look back at-
impactful.
Yeah, and for many, many years, for decades, a regular season of any television show was always about 24 episodes, which is a lot of episodes compared to these days. When if you get like 10 episodes, 10 to 13, that feels like a lot off of something like, Kim's Convenience or any kind of current series.
A lot of the Netflix animes, or yeah, I would call them animes. They're not produced in Japan, but they're animes. Are like 6 episode pilot seasons. They're like, oh hey, we're gonna see how these 6 episodes go, and then you have to wait a year for one that's like 12 episodes. And I'm like, wow, that sucks.
Right, and I think The
remember-
Mandalorian is 10. If I
Yeah,
Go ahead,
totally different thing. But I remember when I was younger, I'm trying to think if I was in middle school or when about it was, but Nickelodeon did a thing where, after they would air like I'm going to screw up the shows because I don't remember like the sequence of when stuff was on, but they would like show like a rerun of Rugrats and then an episode of SpongeBob. And then they would show like a 15-minute cartoon that was designed by a viewer, right? But then produced by Nickelodeon. And if people liked it, then they would turn it into a 6-episode pilot. And then if people still liked it, they would turn it into it. And that is how Fairly Odd Parents became like the biggest show Nickelodeon has ever done, like most number of episodes or something like that. It's like to be that kid to like submit.
Yeah, more episodes of that than SpongeBob.
I think SpongeBob surpassed it since, but
yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, but at the time, like Fairly Odd Parents was just like crazy,
That was huge. Yeah.
I remember. I have very weird memories of cartoons because I was always watching documentaries because I was that kid. So people were like, "Oh, I watched so much Cowardly Dog," or "I watched this so much of this." I'm like, I could tell the time based on what Marta Marvel's episode was on, and when the schedule would flip over, because it's about 2 or 3 in the afternoon where the schedule would repeat for the night, and to be like, "Oh, hey, I just watched that 5 hours ago, so it's time for me to do something else." So.
Yeah.
But I don't. So that's the result. I'm like, I watched Danny Phantom and like a lot of the bigger cartoons, like Fairly Odd Parents, but I didn't watch whole seasons of it. I would watch like, oh, I got like 10 episodes a week of that, and then the rest of the time was just me watching like how it's made because I don't know, I wanted to.
My oldest was a big Ben 10 fan. And I really enjoyed watching that with him. Although one of the series, I can't remember whether it was when he was the older or when he's younger, wasn't as good as the other one. One was distinctly better.
Yeah.
But that was a pretty fun series.
But we can talk about D&D stuff now if you want.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
Thomas, I made a bourbon renewal, but I was
nice.
Little heavy-handed with the lemon.
Yeah, but you got the creme de cassis in there.
Yep.
Yeah, to me that's a great combination with bourbon for sure. But now I'm doing tiki. See, now we're supposed to be talking about D&D. We're talking about cocktails, but with December I'm getting
Are you
into
still
tiki.
in Roll20? No.
Oh, I can get back in.
No, I'll put it in Discord. There's a D&D mixed drink book.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. Thought about getting it as a sort of a joke. It's called the Dungeon Meister. 75 epic RPG cocktail recipes.
Okay. All right. Tend to be a little, well, I'll take a look. That could be fun.
Could be
I
fun.
just got for Father's Day, I got something I had expressed an interest in, which is this
Ooh,
Nice.
very nice.
Cocktail Codex. This is from the people who did this incredible bar called Death and Company. I think it was the folks from Death and Company.
Okay.
And it's they, how, if any of you know French cooking, you know that there's this theory of these kind of master sauces, and from those are derived all the other sauces. So they developed a similar theory for cocktails, that there are 6 master cocktails. And those are the 6, and that any cocktail you can mention is, philosophically or in spirits related to one of those originals.
So you can walk up to someone and be like, "Are you part of the old-fashioned school or the Marxist school?" Oh, sorry, I'm getting my theory martinis mixed up.
Exactly.
Frankfurt School of Beverages.
The Gestalt school.
There's a mixology book for us to, a different drink for each school of,
Oh yeah, of
social theory or philosophy or whatever.
But then what would happen is we would make it, and then it would just get longer and longer, because you're like, oh well, now you have the neo-Marxists, and you have the neo-Durkheimians, and the classical Durkheimians, and then like you have to constantly be like splintering, and then you're like, I don't know, this no longer has whiskey in it. It's supposed to be a whiskey highball. I don't know.
And then you get some kind of pragmatist influence version, which says, no, we're not a school like any of the others. We're a set of ideas about how you approach making drinks. Sometimes you do need to be rigid about it, but sometimes you just need to make a contextual adjustment around it. So
and then you get like
it's all about the shape of the ice.
Postmodernism, where it's like, well, do we actually need alcohol for it to be a cocktail? And you're like, oh god.
Right. There was if anybody watches Top Chef, a few seasons ago, there was this super annoying chef testant, as they call them. He was this sort of younger guy with a beard, and he was like always doing this really annoying stuff. Like for a quick fire, they're out outside somewhere, and he's always like looking around at the local environment. He, like, grabs a rock that's in there and he serves the quick fire on there. It's part of the environment. Why don't we use it? Like, because it's a rock, and you don't know, like, what is it adding to what's going on here? And is it, was there a sheep peeing on it yesterday? Like, you don't know. So that's too much in the kind of, it's all just in the context situation,
Yeah. Well, those cooking shows, I cannot stand it when. And you don't see it quite as much anymore, but enough that it's still annoying. It's like the deconstructed anything, where you're like, this is a deconstructed sushi roll. No, you spread rice on a piece of seaweed and called it deconstructed.
Right.
Like, just because you were too lazy to roll it up.
Yep.
Exactly. One of the complaints from one of their guest judges or something was like, don't make me the chef.
Right.
Don't make me have to assemble something. I resent that.
It's like oh, you can make your own food with, like, here's a hot salt stone and here's like a hot slate stone or something, and it's like, but I want you to cook it because you know how to cook it perfectly.
Right. Yes. Right. Yeah. Don't offload the discernment onto me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But back to D&D.
Back to D&D.
So I'm really enjoying this, Morgan. I think you've really given us I really like the way that you think about environments, whether it's the large city or the coastline, the little sewer section that we spent time in after we escaped the library. And I think I see, when you talk about using mood boards, I think I really see the influence of that approach, which I've never used myself, but it makes me think that, wow, I could really benefit from doing that, because it would it gives you an evocative set of images or what have you, that then fuels your descriptions, right?
Yeah, I thank you. I'm glad that you like them. Because for me, when I'm like trying to put myself in a place, knowing what's around me is important, because environment is so important. If you're like in a really posh when he when Ren was like, I'm gonna cut open this Persian rug. I'm like, oh, don't do that. Everyone was like, oh. It kind of gives a little bit more feeling of like, hey, these beautiful, red, beautifully stained carpets are on the floor. You're in this beautiful palace. You get a little bit more of the sense of awe, or the sense of like, oh, here I am in this place that I do not belong, sort of feeling, instead of just saying you're in a castle, because like everyone has different understandings of castles, and
Yeah.
I think it comes from me DMing my other group, which is, I don't want to say layperson, but they don't quite have the same knowledge as I do of historical places. So when I say, oh, it looks like the Parthenon, they're like, I don't know what the Parthenon is. I'm like, okay, well, let me get you a picture of the Parthenon and then explain the Parthenon and then explain how it's different. So I can give them that
Well,
image.
I liked where you were going with that for a second. I'm curious whether Luke sees the same connection I feel like I'm seeing, which is that there's a connection between aesthetics and ethics there in how you do that, right? Is that if you describe the aesthetics of it, which implies a whole set of cultural significances and cultural labor and practices, etc., that frames certain kinds of activities as ethical in certain ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not referring to ethics in any way here, I don't think, but maybe everything's about ethics, right? But one of the things I'm thinking of in terms of like environment is like, if like today, we're out in this wooded area with some pillars around, right? In my head, I want to cast Mage Hand and pick up a branch and just have it flying around, right? Given the type of environment that you gave us, it's safe enough to assume that there's a branch, right? I mean, I asked, but I should have just said, okay, I'm going to find a branch and pick it up, But that sort of thinking scales, right? So when you say, like the Parthenon, we can sort of reverse engineer that and say, okay, the Parthenon was made up of this kind of stone and there were this kind of person, and there's a sort of micro world building that goes along with that it gives us something to work off of without having to stop and say, okay, you're on the docks. There are 3 barrels here, and next to those 3 barrels, there are 2 crates. This crate is slightly propped open, and then it's like 2 hours of like exposition of all the things we could pick up and touch.
Yeah.
Right. Versus like, you're on the docks, and it's like that, scene where they land in Tortuga and Pirates of the Caribbean. Go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I definitely think that kind of goes back to like ascribing kind of a social, cultural layer to it. Because for me, for someone of people who research the world and look at different cultures and that kind of stuff, it's easy for us to be like, oh, we're in Greece, we kind of have this understanding of what the culture in ancient Greece might have been like, what it looked like, what it might have smelled like. But for someone who doesn't have that same context, someone who doesn't research or doesn't have a curiosity and that kind of thing, they go, okay, well, I'm kind of drawing a blank. so there's a little, I think I might over rely on it sometimes, where I'm like, hey, you're in the Cologne Cathedral. You don't know what that looks like. It's this beautiful black giant Gothic cathedral. Let me get you a picture, because sometimes it can be over reliance. Yeah.
It's actually it's starting to feel like it's a very clear way to demonstrate the privilege that doxa generates, right? Like if a certain group of people share the same cultural references, the same touchstones, they get to be more efficient in how they describe things to each other. They can sort of luxuriate in the evocative quality of that, which is the way it suggests a whole bunch of subsidiary possibilities that can fuel the contributions, the social action to the moment at hand, whether it's storytelling or the action or whatever, versus the discomfort and it's comfortable, right? Versus the discomfort that comes from the idea that, well, if I tell you I'm DMing some group online, and it's like the Parthenon, attending to the fact that, well, that's a pretty culturally privileged piece of understanding to have, right? So then the question becomes, how do you generate efficiently enough, but also uncomfortably enough, how do you evoke the landscape where you want your players to interact, but that is inclusive in that way, and that is opening, and because at its best, right, it's a landscape for surprise. I always feel like at its best, have some of that kind of privileged doxic stuff going on, because not only because I don't want to describe everything, but like I want to sort of not have to describe everything, but also have like a rogue say to me, "Huh, is there is there a chandelier here? You know, how is it held up? You know, because I want that. I want them to generating
Yeah.
inquiries, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's harder if people don't know to imagine
Yeah.
the rope holding up the chandelier.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of get that disparate, like the people I play with here are very different than my other group, which is a bunch of Final Fantasy players. So if I need to describe something, I'd be like, you're in, it pretty much looks like Limsa Lominsa, and that's just a city in Final Fantasy. They know exactly what I'm talking about. But if I say, oh, you're in, you know, insert Marxist theory or something, they get totally lost or something, you know. So it's
So
like,
let me ask you,
yeah,
can I follow up with a question, Morgan?
yeah.
Because it really plays off this idea of how you use mood boards. Let me ask, I'm curious what both of you think about this. What do we think of sharing mood boards, as Morgan does in Roll20, as a way to try and overcome the kind of privilege of cultural knowledge for settings and environments?
I think so. One of the things that I'm thinking of doing for this new campaign of, 3 very, very green to D&D people
Mm-hmm.
is to start, probably even before session 0, asking like, what is a fantasy magic, medieval-ish type, whatever, any of that camp, that big umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
big tent. Like, what is a movie that you like? What is a book that you like? What is, and maybe even a song or something, and just sort of stir up some of that like background, some of the things that they're familiar with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if it's like, I mean, Star Wars would be a bad example because I'm not familiar with it, but enough to, to get a sense of, the way that they're thinking. So if they say Harry Potter, right? That's a very different way of thinking about magic than maybe I'm thinking about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But it can help me inform. So if I say, oh, well, it's like the main, dining hall in Harry Potter, right?
Yeah.
Then I know that there's at least one person at the table who can start asking those questions about, chandeliers and that sort of thing. But, or, maybe part of it is asking like, who's a character in a TV show that you just can't stand, right?
Right.
So that when the villain comes along and I'm like, oh, they're like Toby from The Office, that's just the way they talk. Then, to have those
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, almost like a deck of cards that you can draw from, and
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely think that mood boards, because they went in one of my groups, they went to a Moria-esque place with a bunch of dwarves, but I wanted a very specific painting. And back in the day I read Spiderwick, which is just, a kid's urban fantasy sort of thing, but their dwarves had these big columns that looked like trees, and they were very beautiful crafted trees, and they looked beautiful. And I'm like, here's Moria, but replace all of the pillars with these beautifully crafted silver trees with glowing, because I'm like, I needed some sort of blueprint for them to base what I imagined off that image. It's like, look at this, it's actually this sort of thing.
were those the books? Sorry, where the cover was like a half a cover and then the back cover folded over the front for the hardcover?
I don't think so. It was about the three
man.
kids who find like a little spyglass and they can see the Feywild through the spyglass.
Oh, okay.
It was my like 4th grade books, but I really was inspired. Like I really wanted to evoke this image that I knew a lot of people had read. So I was like, here's this picture. But I think one of the problems with mood boards is they can be a little bit too prescriptive in a way. Like for me, when I show like, here's this mood board of, the port of Thebes that someone thought of. Here's a picture of like the Alexandria Library that they think is what it looks like, and this is kind of how you piece these together and put them together. But then you're still looking at kind of like a picture. So,
Yeah.
if you don't have the right players, they just go, well, okay, I'm next to the sea. Cool. Like here, the picture
Right.
shows me
Right.
that there's
Right.
things, or there's pictures that show me that there's a forest, so I presume there's a forest. So it's a little
It
bit prescriptive in that way, that you have to kind of know who you're playing with, sort of thing.
it leads me to think that, you know, it might be productive to parse out, you know, several different kinds of relationships between world building, DM, and party that often, you know, get implicitly. If you have a session 0, you know, it's often sort of implicitly part of what's going on there, but sometimes not. And in one of them, just off the top of my head, in one of them, you actually have a less common touchstone based relationship between DM and player, in the sense that in campaigns where a DM is just a really dedicated world builder, and where they've got something that they've cooked up, and it may or may not have its own kinds of references. It always will to some extent, right? But have it be based in, but it could be more seemingly more absurd or bizarre or fantastical. But the point is, I think in this style, which I don't think we've talked about, it's the players are being put in the position of not knowing. Like maybe their characters don't even know. You know, they're thrown, you know, in the Heideggerian sense, into a new environment, right?
Yeah.
So that's one kind of way this whole world building can be set up, because then the players are in fact they're supposed to be starting from a position of ignorance, and they're not really supposed to have a lot of, well, it's like this or it's like this. Leverage what you know about dwarves, leverage what you know about ancient Greece. Now that creates certain challenges for the DM. The DM needs to be able to describe things without doing these kind of common touchstone stuff, and more sort of from the ground up, one would think. But another one is a relationship like we have been talking about, which is the DM and the players already have decided, implicitly or otherwise, that they're just going to an avalanche of common touchstones that they're going to leverage, which is, I think, kind of what we're doing in this campaign, right?
Yeah, I do a lot of that.
And then yet another one is maybe a kind of a pre-canned world of some sort, you know, like Dragonlance or something like that, where there is a product and it's already out there and it's not the DM's creation. I don't know, maybe that's in between the two, because it's a kind of leveraged and established. I feel like there might be others.
I had this interesting, I didn't actually personally play in this campaign, but there was a group that I knew most of the players of, because we were playing Shadowrun together. The DM was playing Ravnica, so he's playing the plot of Guilds of Ravnica. So it's a magic plot. It's been around for a decade or two at this point. No, not a decade, like maybe 12 years. So it's a well-known plot of this plane. But the DM purposely made it so they didn't know about the plot. So the players, he was like, hey, don't read into the plot of Ravnica if you've never played Ravnica. Don't do it. Like, learn about the world, play in the world, but we're going to play the story out as it plays in Magic. And so it was this, like, I'm like, how do you do that? Because these players can just go and ruin their own story. They can just be like, well, I'm just going to go read about the Guilds of Ravnica because it's out there and I can just go look at it. But I feel like the ones like the Far Realm or like Dragonlance and things, they're so hard for me to think about putting in places, because as a DM I have to know everything about the world as well as my players, because then the players can make their own, like, oh, really great backstory, but I also have to know all of the ins and outs for that backstory.
Right.
But yeah, I base a lot of my stuff on touchstones of like real world such. I made a Siberian tiger tabaxi, and I made them have a Russian accent because they live in Siberia. And someone's like, well, it's a fantasy world. They don't have to have a Siberian accent. I'm like, yeah, but I want them to, because that's my touchstone for the character. It's the context they live in. They live in the taiga, so they have a Russian accent. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that point, but yeah.
Well, that's another thing too, is, you know, because it came up when I was watching some of the coverage of the, you know, the marketed sort of previews and such of the new Critical Role campaign, with this new DM who is a person of color. It's a woman, and they made a point of saying whatever gets created by her or through the activity of the campaign, is canon for Matt Mercer's world,
Okay.
which is a nice, I think, gesture, right, to inclusion in D&D. Is for him to adopt the role of the player, and yeah, she's got reins, she's got the driver's seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess maybe there's one that we haven't talked about, which is less about let me try to describe to you something that through a common reference frame, because we all share the same culture, right? Kind of idea.
Yeah.
And instead is, has an ethic where it's much more committed to surprise and to new knowledge, right? Where somebody says, well, I was thinking it would be cool, sort of like you were saying with dwarves. I was thinking it would be cool if dwarves were really nature oriented, not just sort of machinery or crafting or something like that. And everybody around the table goes like, all right, that's kind of cool, and tell us more about that. And then the DM picks it up, and it really is more of that emergent kind of approach, which I think we have a little bit of in this campaign too, which I appreciate,
Yeah, especially with like Verfa's Hill Dwarf.
Right.
Yeah, it's sort of the old like improv strategy of something emerging, right?
Yeah.
And it either dies on the table and everybody forgets about it, or it gets called back. And if it gets called back 3 times, it's there forever. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Yeah. I think it's kind of one of my campaigns, in my other campaign, I have an owl folk, and I was like, what? I don't really have Feywilds in this world, so why do you exist? And she goes, well, maybe I was an owl that got turned into an owl folk by a sorceress who wanted servants. So there's just this community of owl folk somewhere that has lost their mistress sorceress who turned them into people, and they can't read, and they're trying to get their sorceress mistress back. And that's the whole character. And we went back and forth like, this is a great idea. This is what you're doing. And then she was talking about, it's like, yeah, an owl, and he collects books that he thinks are important, but he's just a servant, so he doesn't read. He can't read. So he's running around, and his mission is to get books, but he can't read the books. So he's like, I look at
like
these
an
books.
Instruction manual for a toaster.
Yeah, or like one of the ones he picked up, like you find this really thick tome, and it's really beautifully bound, and it's really pretty, and it has all these cool diagrams in it, and you pocketed it, and then she takes it out at some point later. It's just an encyclopedia. It's just a natural encyclopedia or something. Like, oh, look, it's so important. It's like that. That's just how hands work. Like, we don't need that right now. So it's like that emergent going back and forth of brainstorming, like, okay, well, why would you be in this world? Okay, that makes sense. Let's go for it. With like with the rabbit folk, I'm like, well, what if they're just normal rabbits in this town? Like, people don't care that they're actually sentient. They steal vegetables. They're vermin. even if they're humanoid rabbits, they're still stealing stuff, so they're vermin. So we'll see how that goes. She hasn't quite played it yet, and I'm excited to see people just be like angry at her.
In a Rime of the Frost Maiden campaign, Joe was rolling up a wizard. She almost always plays wizards. And this one is going to be a divination wizard.
Divination wizard.
And we came up, I was thinking about, what would be another interesting character. And another character in the campaign is a Warforged, because I was creating bonds between, there always had to be bonds between any two players at the table. So accompanying her to the north from this academy to sort of research what's going on, as like it's an endless twilight up in this area of Icewind Dale, is this formerly a research valet, which is a Warforged for this academy, whose job is just to sort of go around and collect the books, and make some drinks and do this other stuff that a kind of academically oriented valet would do. But the idea for the character is, upon seeing all of these stars that you can't otherwise see anywhere else in the world, just becomes completely enchanted by that and becomes a druid, Circle of the Stars druid, and starts carving basically a planetarium into their body so they can really light up and create the star map that subclass has, awesome. which is a really kind of just sort of out of the library for the first time in their life, sees this enormous expanse and feels completely attached to it.
It's like the opposite of those. Weren't there those polar bears in an Australian zoo where they were like disoriented? They could tell that they were disoriented because the stars were wrong.
Oh, I didn't hear about that. Oh,
Yeah.
that's wild. Oh,
It was quite a while ago. But
It would make sense.
Yeah.
They're in a different pole.
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
But yeah, I had Warforged, who was like, he had been just like a normal construct, and then he got shut down, and then reawakened by the plane, because he was just in a swamp for like 50 years. He was just hanging out in a swamp, and then slowly but surely the magic of the plane inhabited him and woke him up, and he just kind of gained sentience from that process, and so like he's all this gnarly, all of his bits of Warforged are all vines. They're all
Nice.
torn to
Oh,
like
that's cool.
held together with vines, and he had a goblin companion who would like plant like has like flowers and stuff embedded in him because she just found him in the swamp. I was like, well, you're my friend now, so I'm gonna plant flowers in you.
I
So,
always, for some reason, whenever I picture, and I like playing Paladin, so every now and then I think about characters, a Warforged Paladin, I would be tempted to make it Oath of the Ancients, you
oh
know, and
yeah,
have it be, you know, sort of like, if anybody knows Overwatch, sort of like Bastion from Overwatch.
oh
This,
yeah.
you know, this character that was sort of left for hundreds of years in a natural environment and then was sort of shot through with all the vines and
You know, all this character building talk makes me think that maybe like the off week before, when we get together to do the mini game porting
One shot thingy.
one shot thing. What did I say? The porting, but whatever. We should do a character building one where we build all the characters for the one shot.
one shot. Oh, I think that would be super fun.
Oh, yeah.
I'm always up for that. I would jump at the chance. I need a subreddit for this. I mean, there's 3D6, which is I guess kind of a character building subreddit. But it doesn't seem like people just sort of very often just make characters just to share them, you know, with their backstory and everything, not necessarily to play them. Because I'll never play all of the characters I've made. I've made so many. But I just love typing out backstories for them. My clockwork sorcerer, I don't know if I mentioned him before, but he's a halfling entrepreneur, basically, who turned his family's like very small one-off kind of adventurer's general store into a coast-spanning consortium through his, you know, having this inspiration moment of like synergistics and efficiency and all the rest, like all those words from the Weird Al Yankovic song Synergy. And I love ideas like that. He got in touch with Mechanus, you know, on some day when he's like trying to sort of whiteboard out what he's going to do with this. And then suddenly like everything is in those terms. Characters are fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I also like the idea of like coming up, like picking an existing character from something like Iron Man, right? And thinking, okay, what is the closest I can get to Iron Man within what's available in the menu of options in D&D.
I think kind of for me building characters, I would definitely need I think I just got added.
Oh, a T just got back to us. And actually, folks, so we had our refrigerator die. So part of the reason I stepped away earlier is we have a repair person here. And that's why I so I'm going to go down and deal with that because I think he's wrapping up. But it's just super fun. Looking forward to a couple weeks from now.
To actually fight the manticores.
Hey, I'm not ashamed to say I just love combat in D&D, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh yeah.
Let's back channel to pick a day for our port.
And for the character creation the week before, and 2 weeks before that. That'd be great.
Oh yeah.
All right, take care, everybody.
Take care.
Talk to you later.
Bye, stream.